Deb is going to start it whenever it's ready. Whenever she's ready.
Just a few minutes. Like.
Welcome, everyone. I call to order the meeting of the Northern Virginia Transportation Authority Finance Committee for June 8th, 2023. First, we have approval of the minutes of March 9th, 2023. Do we have a motion to approve? So move, Madam Chair.
Second.
Okay, any comments? Okay. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thank you. Next, we have a presentation. We have with us this evening Mr. Bob Lazaro, Executive Director of the Northern Virginia Regional Commission. We welcome you, Mr. Lazaro.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I want to thank my chair, Council Member Chapman, our Vice Chair Sheila Olam, our Treasurer Supervisor Kathy Smith, and member of our Executive Committee, Matt DeFerranti, for being there. And also, I thought I saw one of our most active commissioners, Commissioner Bailey, there as well. So thank you very much for the opportunity to present lease extension for 3040 Williams Drive. Next slide, please, Dev. Our current lease expires 2 years from this end of this July. I know that you've seen this presentation was in your package. Base rent for us ending the year September 3023 is $32.29. It escalates. Base rent for NVTA is $30.65, and it escalates as well. NVRC is represented by Ben Eldridge of Cambridge, USA, who is on this Zoom call as well, if there are any specific questions that I am unable to answer. Next question, please. Next slide, please. The lease proposal that we've obtained and has been approved by the commission is an extension through 2033, which is 8 years past 2025. The new base rent year end next year is $30 per square foot, escalating by 2.5% per year. The landlord is offering a $25 per square foot for improvements, of which $10 can be converted to rent. Both NVRC and NVTA pay equal amount of rent per square foot and share proportionally in the savings. And the savings for both of us proportionally is 10 months of free rent over a 5-year period. And I know what was a concern in my conversations with Mr. Longy, the space that is adjacent to NVTA down the end of the hall. The proposed lease retains the right for us to request the landlord to provide the additional office space adjacent to our offices. Currently, the space is built out and is not permanently occupied. At the end of the day, the savings for NVRC proportionally is $514,000, and to NVTA, $373,947.06. Next slide, please. As you know, our conference space is well used. We have 4 conference rooms available on a first come, first served basis. NVRC has always been committed to working with NVA to coordinate the scheduling. In the draft lease is a paragraph on how we can memorialize that in writing. NVRC has 10 commission meetings in the evening, our 6 community military partnership meetings, 10 to noon, which Supervisor Bailey attends. We're the administrative agent for Go Virginia, Northern Virginia, which only has 4 full council meetings during the year, and they're in the morning. And NVRC provides space on a limited basis to DCR and DEQ for trainings. During COVID, NVRC purchased and pays the license agreement for the Zoom room virtual meeting equipment and has made it and will continue to make it available to NVTA at no cost. Next slide, please. NVRC ourselves, we foresee no need for additional space other than what is available to it in its current footprint. Our community military partnership program manager for our MIR project is leaving us to go back to the U.S. military. So we have more than enough space within our existing footprint to meet any future needs. Next slide, please. Next steps. I've been given permission by the full commission to sign the lease agreement. We retain the services available to review the lease and author the sublease agreement. All of these documents have been provided to NVTA to share with the Council of Councils. And NVTA is to review and sign the sublease agreement with us so we can take advantage of the savings that both of us will share and go from there. And that is my full presentation, members of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Lazaro. We appreciate the presentation. I have a question to start us off. I had hoped that there would be a plan to resolve conflicts over the use of the large conference rooms, and I don't see that here in the documents. Could you comment on?
It's in the lease agreement. There's a paragraph about how we're going to meet on a quarterly basis to schedule meetings. I am only aware of one instance brought to my attention. There was a double booking, but our meetings have been the fourth Thursday of the month at 7:30 p.m. for the last 20 years, back to when I was on the commission itself as the mayor of Purcellville. So there is in the lease a paragraph on a process to schedule meetings. And frankly, Mayor, our organizations are so small, and Mr. Longhi's office is 100 steps from mine. If there was an issue, I would suspect that Mr. Longhi would come and see me or Ms. Tenney, who's my deputy, who is in the room.
So what is the process based on? Is it anticipated attendance or
Well, the process would be we would get together and on a quarterly basis schedule our meetings to make sure that there were no conflicts. Again, we only have 10 evening meetings a year. And so that leaves pretty much a full month of opportunities for scheduling meetings. And again, in all my time as executive director, I am aware of one issue about a double booking of a room that affected both our organizations or affected NVTA, but we work very closely together. If we didn't, we wouldn't have made the Zoom room equipment available to the authority at no cost. So I think we work very well together. And I know that the lease has been given to the Council of Councils, and if they have any suggested language to firm that up, we would be happy to consider it.
Thank you. I think Fair Wood has a question.
Yeah, just a follow-up question to that. So I just want to get a point of clarity. So your meetings are the fourth Thursday, and so ours is the second Thursday of the month. So the standing reservation without us having to meet is locked in for that second Tuesday of every month. I think we bumped heads even in the month of December a couple of times, but where we have to find a location to have our meetings at during that time.
We did, and we moved ours, realizing that there was a problem. And last October, the commission adopted our schedule, which I personally walked down to hall to Ms. Teal just so that she knew where we were. And the conflict wasn't so much with NVTA, but it was with NVTC.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Lazaro, thank you for all the work you've done over the past, especially this past 4 years. NVRC has been a very good regional partner, and especially during COVID, you all did so much work to plan meetings with the governor and bring us together for events that we thought were really going to be very important, and speaking for one voice in Northern Virginia through the COVID pandemic. So I have very much appreciated NVRC's attempts and in fact successes to move us together as a region. I have quite a few questions though about the lease agreement. My first question is, at this time, how long is the lease period?
Well, it expires in 2 years. It expires in July of 2025, Madam Chair.
Is it every 2-year lease or is it every 3 years?
No, it's a 10-year lease. And we're in the final 2 years. So
sorry,
I'm really excited, Madam Chair, that we're at this point because
let me ask a little clearer. I'm sorry, that's my fault. I didn't ask that clear enough. How long is the lease that NVTA signs with NVRC?
it's a year to year. We have a letter of agreement,
Right now, we have a year-to-year lease. From
a year
NVRC.
to year agreement. Yes, ma'am.
And your suggestion is to go from year to year to a 8-year plus 2 more. That is a huge going from year to year to an 8-year agreement. Tell me why that jump is you think is appropriate.
Because it saves both organizations a considerable amount of money. And frankly, Madam Chair, if NVTA decides to leave us, I'll give you a perfect example that you leave next year, you go to your own space. I'm holding the bag for $20,000 a month in lost rent. So
Yeah, I
it would
think,
cost-
Ms. Lazar, you jumped way ahead. I feel like we're a new married couple, just had our first argument, you're asking for a divorce. You should kind of back that up a little bit. That's
Well, I would, I mean, the honest answer is, Madam Chair, in the real estate business, the state of the commercial market, having a lease, a 2-year lease is not going to engender any savings for us or for you. And spreading out 8 years past is a benefit. I mean, obviously, if the authority is thinking about, well, hey, look, we may only want to stay 3 past the existing period, we would have to work with Mr. Eldridge and inform our commissioners what we would have to do.
back you up some, because the authority hasn't actually had this discussion at all yet about how long we will stay or what to stay. You're a little ahead of me. I'm literally just asking questions right now.
Yeah, I understand. I understand. But I appreciate the question, Madam Chair. And I just, I mean, there's significant implications to us. And as I understand, and Mr. Eldridge, who is an expert at this, will tell you that, we only have a letter of agreement. We don't even really have a sublease. And so going out the 8 saves us, both of us, a lot of money.
Well, you said it saves you about 10 months of lease agreement, about 10 months, which is per 5 years.
That's 20
Yes, ma'am.
But it's still a very long time for NVTA to sign a lease agreement, because I understand and I appreciate that you all have a small organization, especially for how much you get done with your organization. You guys did a large amount done. NVTA, however, is growing and will continue to grow. And so, to sign us and to lock us into an 8-year lease is a fairly long time when we don't know in the next 3 years what we might need or not need, let alone in the next 5 years what we might need, or 10 years what we might need. And that's not saying anyone wants to leave. I can tell you, no one from NVTA does want to leave. I've talked to staff, no one wants to leave. So we can kind of pull that down a couple of notches, but it's still a really long lease agreement to sign. My next question is this: the space you talked about that was adjacent to the office, that is not under the purview of NVRC right now, is not occupied by anyone at this time.
It's my understanding that it's leased but empty. It's been fitted out. The landlord has been doing some work in the building, so they may have moved some folks in there temporarily. I think I have understood from Mr. Longy that the authority is interested in it, and we would certainly work with the authority and our representative to see how we can get that space sooner than later for the authority. There are options. There's a small conference room, the Potomac Conference Room, that could be retrofitted into offices if need be. So we'd give 2 more spaces.
Mr. Lazaro, if you could let me finish my question before you answer the question I haven't finished, that would be really appreciated. So let me start that one more time.
All right.
It is my understanding that at this time, there's nobody, so there may be somebody occupying it, but NVRC is not leasing that space. Is that correct?
That's correct. We are not leasing it.
But NVRC is not leasing that space. Why would NVTA need to come to NVRC if we wanted to lease that space?
Well, that's a good question, and I think it would be just for consistency of the lease agreement that we have and engender more savings. I mean, another approach, Madam Chair, would be at the end of the current 2-year period, NVRC and NVTA stay in the same space, but split the lease. You have your own lease, we have our own lease.
And you would do that at the end of what period?
At the end of 2025, but July of 2025 is when the current lease expires. So we would work with NVTA to see how we could take the next steps to, you have your own lease for your space and we have a lease for our space.
So dual leasing in the same area. I might have some more questions in a little while, but I
Sure.
think Chair's going to call on somebody else.
Yes.
Okay.
Have any comments on the lease rates or anything?
I'll follow up with Mr. Lazaro said. I broached the topic 2 years ago of bifurcating the lease. In other words, which would be an immediate savings to the commission of 42% of their rent obligation. And I think we could probably negotiate that without waiting to 2025. I had hoped to be able to have that discussion a long time ago in preparation for our 21 and fiscal 22 budgets. So I'd be more than happy to take this conversation in that direction, especially with the ability for the authority to have representation from a brokerage whose fiduciary duty would be to the authority, as well as obviously the council of council, who as a point of clarification has not seen the lease documents yet. I just got a complete package Friday.
Do you have a follow-up, Madam Chair?
Well, Madam Chair, I would say that I think this is a conversation that needs to be pursued. How would y'all want to do that? Would you want to do that by motion, or you all just kind of informally get together and have a discussion of the bifurcation of the lease?
I'll take the direction, verbal direction, and with the support of the action item tonight, I think the authority would be well positioned to have those conversations.
Item number 4. Mr. Snyder, do you have any questions?
Yeah, first of all, I want to thank NVRC staff for some heads-up negotiating on the current lease agreement. But after all, it is a finance committee, and I don't know at this point whether that's a good deal for us or not, considering the office market right now. And I'd like a little more information on that. Hopefully we can get that information, because I want to make sure that we're doing our due diligence for the benefit of the authority and all the people who make the authority possible. So I'm a little bit interested in that, but I also recognize that it's not just square footage cost, but if you were to make a move, for example, there's a cost to that. It's not only a financial cost, but it's a programmatic cost. So I hope to get some sort of comparison so that we know this is in the range. Like if we did this split lease, that's in the range of what's competitive and a good deal for us and the people that the public that supports us. So that would be my only addition here, would be try to get more context for this, but at the same time, work to see if splitting the lease is possible to maintain the savings that Bob has negotiated for us, and then compare that and then decide how we go. There's one other factor here. I don't know how to factor it in. We're not on Metro Rail. Metro Rail, as we know, has expanded dramatically throughout the region. I think that's one negative about this particular location. I don't know how we figure that in. That's not really a finance committee discussion. That's ultimately a authority discussion. But I'd like a little more background as to whether what's being proposed here is a good deal in the context in which we're operating. And then we also pursue Mr. Lazaro this bifurcated lease approach. But I want to thank Bob. I think you've really negotiated hard to get a better deal. So I thank you for that.
Thank you. And if I may, just for a second, for clarification, the full lease agreement was emailed out on May 22nd. But I mean, it's neither there nor here for us. we value the partnership. Mr. Eldridge, who's on the line, I'm sure he's taking notes, and I'm out of town with my wife on annual leave, but when I get back, Mr. Longy and I can have a conversation. We'll ask Mr. Eldridge to come in to see what we could do together.
Thank you. I'd like to follow up on my previous question. When you meet with Mr. Longy and have conversations, would you consider entertaining something other than first come, first serve for potential to resolve potential conflicts for the large conference room? And I'm thinking specifically of the Transportation Roundtable, which was a very important event for the NVTA.
Again, Madam Chair, in the lease is a lease agreement, is a proposal to work out scheduling, and we get together every quarter and say, this is what our meetings are. I mean, I need to, like you need to schedule your annual monthly meetings. I need to schedule mine because our calendar is published in advance, as is yours. But all of the other things, we could certainly work with the authority to make sure if there is a roundtable or another event, that they are given the priority. The curse and blessing of COVID is most of the work that we do now on our webinars, et cetera, are all done via Zoom.
Are there any other more follow-up questions or comments? Yes, ma'am.
Madam Chair, following up on what my colleague, Mr. Snyder said, the motion could actually be a motion to go have staff go research. The motion doesn't have to be to enter into anything. It could be a motion to ask the staff to research.
Mr. Long.
That is essentially the motion for
Yeah,
action item.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, exactly.
Yes. Mr. Snyder, do you have any follow-up? Any other comments or questions?
No, it's just, I think, potentially two parts of the research. I would be number one, working with Mr. Lazaro on the separate lease concept. And also looking at if we added additional space, presumably that would increase our lease payments. So we still, what are we looking at if that happens? And then secondly, get some more sense about the overall commercial real estate context, and is this ultimately within the range of a good deal for the NVTA along the lines that have been presented.
And that's the motion.
Sure. I move. Whatever. Yeah. No, seriously, yeah.
Okay. Is there, you have something?
I just want to just echo the sentiments to thank Bob and NVRC for all the work they've done on this. And with the number of projects, we're looking at where we are today, we're celebrating the anniversary. From the number of projects we've done when we started to where we are now, to happen to really enlarge the staff as we continue to grow over the next couple of years to accommodate the vast multimodal transportation approach from all the people we need to hire. I think it's a great opportunity to look at how we can be able to look at future growth and expansion. So I'm in support of the motion that's going to be put forward.
In item 4.
In item number 4.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Wood. Mr. Lazaro, we want to thank you so much for the presentation. We understand you're on vacation. We appreciate you taking time out of your vacation to make this presentation.
I appreciate that, Madam Chair, and to Mayor Brown's point. I was on the NVTA when it was broke, so the only time they needed a town representative was to get the minutes approved. And so I appreciate all the work that you do, and I actually like seeing all the orange cones on the roadway because I know that you all are part of the funding mix to make it happen. So thank you for the time, and look forward to working with you to get this closed.
Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to number
What, did you
4.
make a motion for that?
I think
Or you make a motion?
no, there is no motion for this.
Okay,
That's
you
covered
made a
under
motion.
number 4.
Okay, all right.
Okay, number 4, office space planning services. Mr. Long.
Thank you, Mayor. As we've basically already talked about, the lease structure is NVRC holds a lease with the property owner through a management agent. They're represented by Mr. Eldridge as a professional broker. They also have legal advice on this issue through a law firm called Venable. So they have both of those fiduciary responsibilities covered. What this action item proposes is that the authority will ride a Commonwealth of Virginia procurement for brokerage and consulting services. That will include examining the NVRC lease proposal, other subleases, leases, direct leases, as well as ownership. So it covers the full spectrum of anything you can do in real estate. The company that is under contract with the state, Devarius Real Estate, has actually negotiated the sale for the CIT building. It helped the Virginia Passenger Rail Authority obtain its offices very recently, and it's got a very good pulse on the Northern Virginia real estate market. To Councilmember Snyder's point, the Wall Street Journal today published an article that said there are $1.8 trillion of office space loans coming due in the next 2 years that do not meet credit standards. So this is very much an evolving marketplace. With that, with the approval of the suggested motion, we can get to work on doing the analysis, working with the commission, and come back to the authority, I would hope, in September, or to the finance committee in September.
Thank you, Mr. Longy. I think it's essential for the NVTA to have this in order to move forward on the office space issue. I think the NVTA also needs the benefit of a real estate professional. I think that will provide a level playing field. So any comments or questions on this?
Not to make the motion. I'll ask my question in the motion, Madam Chair.
I can make the motion.
Yes, please do.
I move the NVTA Finance Committee direct the Chief Financial Officer to undertake an examination of office space, market options, signing representation letter with Devarius Real Estate Incorporated, and provide a report to the committee as soon as practical.
We have a second.
Sorry.
All in favor?
Wait, discussion.
Oh, I'm sorry. Discussion. Comments?
So, Madam Chair,
Yes.
I just want to make sure that at this point, this will come back to the committee, so we're not taking this to the full authority until after the study is done. It comes back, and then the study itself, before decisions are made, goes to the full authority. Okay, I'm fine with that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Snyder, comments?
Only that part of this work going forward will be to work with NVRC.
I think the discussion that is new tonight of bifurcating the lease, I think is a very healthy approach,
As well as look at other options.
as well as other options.
Yeah, I'm excited about the option, of buying the building and seeing if it's cash flow positive. That's just, we buy the building and come to Danville.
Yeah.
If we're looking at that, all that, I know we're not
Thank you,
doing that
Mayor
tonight. I know we ain't doing that tonight. That's just, I just want to say, I definitely like to see that. Mike, always value your financial advice and what you bring back to us. So whatever you bring back in the report, I know it's going to be good.
Thank you. Apologize for jumping the gun there. In our city meetings, we do the opposite. We have the motion. Well, we discuss it first, then we have the motion and vote. So my apologies. I imagined I was in Manassas Park for a moment there. Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to sole source procurement declaration, Mr. Longman.
Thank you, Mayor Rochelle. The NVTA procurement policy requires the staff to report to the finance committee at the next meeting whenever a sole source procurement is done. To be honest with you, I can't remember when the last time we did a report of a sole source. The purpose of that caption within the policy is to make sure that staff doesn't get lackadaisical with sole sources and use them frequently and avoid the open and competitive procurement process. In this case, the city of Fairfax was awarded a project that it now wants to change some of the project parameters on in order to make sure that the authority is protected and is still getting the benefit from the project. With the change parameters, the project needs to be remodeled. The most cost-efficient and time-efficient way of doing that is to go back to the firm that did that original modeling in order to recreate the last transaction versions model from a standalone company would be deep in the six figures and would also take probably a year and a half. So with that, we also, in our transaction contracts, leave a door open for these type of things to come back to whatever firm did the original modeling, assuming that the firm agrees. In this case, the firm has agreed. The city of Fairfax is paying the cost. So there is no cost to the authority. And with that, the obligation to notify you is done.
Comments or questions? Yes. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Long. For investment
Just a-
portfolio report. Oh,
I'm sorry, just a question. Is this something we need the councils to review or is the?
Typically, we haven't in the past. I mean, we've done a task order to a contract with AECom. That's basically a follow-on from their original contract with to do the last version of transaction.
So it's the appropriateness of the agreement, a matter of Fairfax, matter for Fairfax City or a matter for the authority?
We've worked with Fairfax City. They passed a motion, city council did, to remodel the project and pay those expenses. That motion is attached in the packet. And they obviously, we've worked very closely with them to make sure the specifications for the project remodeling match exactly what they're proposing to do. And I'll also add, the city has done its own analysis and believes that this change is going to improve the project's performance. But we are required to do our own analysis, which is what we're doing through that task order.
Is our own analysis, I'm sorry to prolong this, but is our own analysis programmatic analysis or legal analysis?
It's a modeling.
Yeah, it's problematic. The city's changed the scope, or they would like to change the scope from what we originally modeled and funded. And they think the new scope will actually score higher for congestion reduction relative to cost. And that's where the modeling comes in. So we have to remodel the project and make sure we post the new congestion reduction relative to cost score. So it really is more programmatic. And the city believes that it will also the project will come in a little cheaper, a little less expensive than what we originally programmed. But we won't know that until we go forward with the modeling exercise.
But the reason why we have this in front of us is out of a concern that we not use sole source contracts
On a regular
extensively
basis.
or on a regular basis. So I guess the only question I would have is I'd like something in writing from the Fairfax City Attorney that this is an appropriate sole source contract. I think that's such a good precedent for the future. It may already be in there.
Well, it's not, the procurement decision isn't the city's. The procurement decision is the authorities.
So, Mr. Snyder, so what happened is this.
Sorry to prolong.
No, that's
Yeah,
okay.
is
This
the first I've
project
seen this.
was approved in our inaugural 6-year program under the previous transaction and not the current transaction that you adopted in December. A different model was used for that transaction. So that's really why we contacted AECom, not only a different model, probably one that AECom is one of few firms in the nation that uses that particular model. So, and they have all of the components so that the project can be reanalyzed or rescored against all of the other projects that we analyzed at that particular time. If the consultant that did the most previous transaction were to do it, and they're still under, that's what Mr. Longer was saying, we still have a doorway open, if you will, to do work with them. They would have to try to build that model, and it would cost a lot more, and it would take a lot longer to do, because that wasn't a model they used and they weren't the ones that did that particular transaction.
So my own question is not the programmatic question. I think you've made a good case for doing this in the program standpoint. But we have it in front of us as a quasi-legal issue about overuse of sole source contracts, right? So the only question I'm trying to get confirmed from, and I'm not trying to provide a livelihood for my brethren in the law, but I'm trying to get it confirmed that this is an appropriate sole source contract under Virginia procurement law. That's the only question I'm trying to get answered.
And I would
from a legal
suggest that
standpoint.
we use the authorities council of that rather than going to the cities.
Okay, well, but I also don't want to hold up the city of Fairfax. If we take the time to do that, will that interfere?
Well, the council of council has already reviewed the MOA between the authority and the city and improved it, commented on it. However, I did not ask them to be, to be fully transparent. I did not ask them about the sole source aspect, so they've not seen those details. I don't want to put them on the spot and ask them to opine on that now, but I'll be more than happy to have a subsequent conversation with them.
It's fine with me. We passed through the item, but I would request that council review it just to make sure that under Virginia procurement law, this is an okay way to go. Council, if that's okay with you. I'm not asking for an opinion tonight. But, okay, you're willing to do that. Okay, thanks. Sorry, but I think one thing I know is when you start to get into the sole source contract area, you start to raise not only programmatic but legal issues about under what circumstances can you do it. Thanks.
Thanks, Mr. Steiner. Okay, if there are no further comments or questions, okay, we'll move on to investment portfolio report.
Sure, Mayor Randall, if you want to wish, Rochelle. If you're okay, I'll just do a summary report on the next three items, given the time.
Roll them all together.
Investment portfolio is doing very well. The market is in our favor. And to go to the monthly revenue report, we continue to watch grantors, but the poor performance in the grantors tax category is more than compensated for in the outstanding performance in the sales tax category. So we are very positive for the year on our revenue estimates. And we still have, even though this is June, on the last money that we received was in May, we still have 3 months of this fiscal year to continue to accrue additional sales tax. And on the operating budget is in line with what was passed by the authority. And no changes.
Any comments or questions for Mr. Longview? Mr.
Yeah.
Schneider?
Thanks. So I'm glad that the market is in our favor. That's always good. But did I see some chart here that compared our investment returns to other potential ways we could invest, and we didn't compare that favorably?
Page 3.
Yeah.
I believe this chart you're looking at. This was a topic we discussed with the committee some months ago. The benchmarks that we started using for the portfolio and are covered in the policy are relatively short-term benchmarks. We had talked to the committee about the portfolio was originally envisioned to be a very short-term portfolio. And so short-term benchmarks, when you have the feds raising interest rates 5% in basically a year, those short-term benchmarks are going to shoot up. However, we have a longer duration portfolio because we're now 1.6 billion and we're not going to invest it on a 30, 90-day cycle. So we were due to come back to the committee with recommendations for benchmarks that actually track the maturity period for the portfolio as it's actually operating. And that would reflect numbers that are closer to the 2.7. I think back in that discussion, I also pointed out, and perhaps didn't do it as well as I could have, we could meet those percentage numbers and exceed those. But we would have to sell securities at a loss in order to do it, so we would be reducing income. So as a portfolio manager, you don't want to be chasing benchmarks sometimes because it could actually entail losses in the portfolio, or in our case, more of a reduced income, not actual overall losses. So we've taken the strategy to go out 2 years, 3 years, even as far as 5 years, but we are being compared to benchmarks that are basically 1 year and under.
Madam Chair, just a follow-up question. When I look at that sort of box thing on page 2, I think it is, it makes it look like we're underperforming, and you, I think, provided more background that suggests that would be an incomplete and inaccurate picture. So I'm concerned about someone taking this out of context and saying, you're earning 2.7%, where if you put in the local government investment pool, you'd be earning 5.06%. So if the story is bigger than that, as you've indicated that it is, I would like to see as clear a description of that as this is clear, potentially creating the wrong impression. That's what I'm trying to get to.
Well, the way for us to correct that is with that description, come back and propose new, more appropriate benchmarks for the portfolio. Quite frankly, the reason I haven't done that is because I've been pulled away on other things such as a lease.
That'll be very helpful if you could do that. I'm just concerned about this floating out there and wrong conclusions being drawn from it. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, moving on to a verbal update.
No update at this time. I can make an update at the full board, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And many thanks to staff for all your hard work. Is there any other business to come before the committee? Okay, there being none, then we are adjourned. Thank you.